Okay, guys, I'm back. This is part 4 of the Jeffersonian Republic lecture series. Okay, we're going to be talking about the traitor Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr was Jefferson's first vice president. He does drop out of the cabinet during Jefferson's second term. And Burr he's a strange character. He's a really good guy to kind of, if you want to do some research on an oddity to some degree. Some people actually do like Aaron Burr, and remember Hamilton hates his guts. But he actually, when he leaves Jefferson's cabinet, he ends up joining some radical Federalists. Him and Jefferson end up seeing a lot different viewpoints and uh, kind of a falling out to some degree, I guess you would call it. But anyway, the Federalists have, has a goal. These radical Federalists have a goal of breaking New England from New York away from the USA. Now, again, some people claim that, and I didn't start my clock. Let me start my clock with that. Some people claim that these radical Federalists are actually sour grape Federalists. Remember that sour grape syndrome we talked about in class? That they're kind of upset that they don't have the power anymore. That the Democratic Republicans have taken power, and so they're kind of wanting that power back. These radical Federalists, anyway, and they believe that they can actually succeed in doing this by breaking New England and New York away from the USA and basically have them secede, develop their own country, and begin to divide up, the new USA as more of a European style. Alexander Hamilton actually finds out about Aaron Burr's plot and the Radical Federalists' plot to actually do this. Hamilton actually said very insulting things about Burr. Burr, in turn, says very insulting things about Hamilton, and Burr ends up challenging Hamilton to a duel. Now, if you know anything about duels during this time period, they were considered the gentleman's way of handling issues. Instead of going on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, where you just talk smack about one another, or going on to some news, show or something and just belittling the person to death. So basically, this was a gentleman's way of handling your differences when you have your honor has been at stake. So actually, Hamilton does agree to this duel, but after the pistols are handed out, Hamilton basically announces that he refuses to shoot. He's not going to fire his weapon. This is ridiculous. Hey, I showed up. We can. This is ridiculous. Period. Unfortunately for him, Burr does not feel the same way. Remember, Burr does not like Hamilton, and Hamilton does like Burr, and Burr wasn't about to let Hamilton get off on this, so he actually shoots him. And when he shoots Hamilton, he actually ends up killing the Federalist Party. It's the last hope for any rise up in, or even for Burr himself, maybe later on, rising up in the Federalist Party. So it's one of the nails in the coffin for the Federalist Party to a large degree. And without doubt, by shooting Hamilton, Burr destroys his political career. And if you didn't know about it, and you should know this, but this duel takes place in Weehawken, New Jersey. Actually, if you go across that little Weehawken Bridge over there, there's a little place marker right there next to the bridge of which place has the duel. And I think they have a reenactment, if I'm not mistaken, every year. I think just about every year that they have some little small reenactment of the duel between Hamilton and Burr. So that's the story about Hamilton. I mean, excuse me. Yeah, Hamilton's death. Excuse me. Um, After the assassination, after the duel and the killing of Alexander Hamilton, Burr then joins up with a gentleman called General James Wilkinson. And since he had the New England, New York didn't think work, so we just got Louisiana. So they decided they're going to try to break the Louisiana territory within the U.S. and then turn around and plan to invade Mexico and Florida and just divide that into a whole new section or new country, whatever the case may be. In 1806, though, Wilkinson really gets nervous about this concept of, an invasion and this concept of breaking away from the United States and this whole how this may actually look treasonous to some degree. So he actually turns on Burr, and like I said, a really good research project to do would be on Aaron Burr. He's a really interesting character, and his life during this time period is really interesting. Burr actually gets arrested. He's tried for treason. But remember, John Marshall is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and he literally finds Burr not guilty um, on the promise of that is treasonous intentions. Okay, so in other words, basically the court ends up siding, it gets appealed up to the Supreme Court, and it ends up siding that Burr did not commit treason. He did have treasonous intentions, but he never really commits the treason. So therefore, just because you have the intentions to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you're guilty of that crime. So in other words, like if you had and somebody said you had the intentions, they felt you had the intentions to shoot someone, but you never carry it through, you never shoot the person in any way whatsoever, then you'd be charged for murder. Well, you didn't shoot the person, so therefore it'd be somewhat hard, or even attempted murder you couldn't be because you just had the intentions. You didn't do anything. But anyway, so Burr goes to, and that's kind of last straw for Burr, and he ends up going to Europe, where he tries to convince Napoleon to invade USA. And that's not going to work because remember, we kind of bought land from them, and so that wasn't going to work. And plus, Napoleon's, just starting that new fight with England. So Jefferson gets reelected in 1804, very, very popular. Look at it, I mean, the electoral votes is astronomical this time. 162 electoral votes to 14, so there's no competition for Jefferson whatsoever. He wins hands down. But he is faced with a problem immediately because Napoleon and Great Britain have started up on another 11-year fight that is going to ensue. And basically, for a brief time at least, the Americans, not just Jefferson, they enjoy prosperous trading with both countries. So in other words, hey, you guys can beat the snot out of one another. We don't care. We're going to trade with both of you, and we're going to make off very well. In 1805, Britain wins the Battle of uh, Trafalgar. I cannot say this word. Trafalgar. Pronounce it yourself. Okay, and basically declares that they became the king of the seas. Napoleon wins the Battle of Austerlitz, and he actually basically claims that now France is and himself becomes the king of land. So Great Britain and France basically end up forcing or force a start of an economic warfare between the two, and this becomes a very big part of this conflict between France and England, this economic warfare. So basically, to counter this, Great Britain passes becomes known as the Order of Council in 1806, and it basically closes all your ports under French control. So this is a tit for tat kind of, hey, I'm going to do this to you, and then you're going to do this to me, because Napoleon turned around and says, okay, you can do that to us, fine. We'll seize all merchant ships entering British ports. So any ships that we see, moving toward a British port, we're going to confiscate it, we're going to seize it, we're going to take all the cargo, and either take the ship or sink the ship, one of the two. So you can guess we're the ones that get kind of caught in the middle. So because of this, Great Britain is because of the ships being captured and everything else, Britain is having a shortage of sailors. So they return to the impressing of U.S. sailors. Now there's about 6,000 Americans that are impressed, excuse me, not oppressed, from 1808 to 1811. Remember, this was the thing that Jay's Treaty does not address. Remember that the Americans got really upset by because that this was not one of the issues that got resolved by Jay's Treaty, and that's why Jay's Treaty is often considered a failure. In 1807, a British ship fires on the Chesapeake. It becomes known as the Chesapeake Incident. Probably should put that in blue too, Chesapeake Incident. So kind of in your notes somewhere, circle that one. That you should know that one too. Uh, the ship was the Chesapeake. Becomes known as the Chesapeake Incident. Uh, when the sailors actually refused to hand over the ship, and the ship refused to hand over its sailors to the British ship. I'm really confusing you right now. Okay, so there's a lot of Americans that want war with England. This impressment thing is just, kicking you, just keep it kicking us, and we're not doing anything about it. But Jefferson, on the other hand, he wanted peace. He did not want to go to war with Great Britain. He really doesn't want to go with France either. So he devises a plan, and since I got about a minute and 20 seconds, I guess I'll start this plan, and then I will continue on with this in part 5 after this one. Okay, so Jefferson actually fights back economically. Okay, he doesn't want to go to a war. So he pushes for what becomes known as the passage of the Embargo Act of 1807. This is another one of those acts, guys, that you see a lot on the test. This act is also known as the Oh Grab Me Act. Now, basically what the Embargo Act does is it forbids the import of all goods from the United States. And underline that, guys, because that's really important. Now, let me backtrack really quick before my time runs out. Why do you think it was also known as the Oh Grab Me Act? If anyone in class can tell me why that is known as the Oh Grab Me Act, extra credit for you. Okay, my time's about to run out, so let me finish this slide. So it's important also to remember that this forbid the export of all goods from the United States, and that is important. No exports, none leave the United States. In other words, you can't export to any country, none. Because the concept was that if any exports leave the country, it would eventually, and it would be very hard for the United States to control of where it actually ends up. There goes my timer. Okay, I'm going to finish this one up. So it would have been very difficult for the United States to be able to deal with where are these goods actually going to end up. So they basically forbid all exports. Now, at the time, at least Jefferson thinks so, that Europe relies heavily on U.S. food. Almost all of Europe does, at least the conception was that they did. And Jefferson figures by doing this that the political pressure, economic pressure from even other countries besides France and England, that it would cause them to all come crawling back to the United States and begging us, so please, please release this, get rid of this Embargo Act, we'll do whatever we can possibly do. We'll work out some agreement. We'll get rid of this order of the council. We'll quit the impressments and everything else. It doesn't really work the way Jefferson wants to. It's really not a good idea because of the fact that it actually hurts the American economy. Remember, you just closed down all the port. Nobody can export. So New England has to shut all of its ports down. Soup kitchens has to be set up because there's so much unemployment. And of course, farmers, they grow all these crops, that they were selling overseas, and now they have nowhere to sell these crops. So these crops just sit there on the fields and rot, or even if they've been harvested, they sit in warehouses with nowhere to go and end up rotting. So basically, it just backfires on Jefferson tremendously. And Americans become extremely outraged over this. It really is hurting the American economy. So Americans do what they can possibly do. They begin illegally trade to get around this act. So in other words, they begin to smuggle goods out of the country and the cloak of darkness, and so they just kind of defy the law completely. And so Jefferson tries to hold on to this embargo with everything he can possibly hold on to. He doesn't want to bend on it. And I'm going to stop right here and start part 5 at this point right here. So I'll be right back in just a minute.